Hello and welcome to another episode of AppStories. Today's episode is brought to you by Copilot Money. My name's John Voorhees, and I'm back from holiday break with Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. Happy New Year to you and to our listeners. It's very good to be back.
Happy New Year. It's good to see you. We kicked everything off in the new year with last week's episode of MacStories Unwind. We'll have an NPC coming out the day after this episode of AppStories. So yeah, we're back in the swing of things. Podcasting, writing, the whole nine yards.
Slowly getting back to normal. We have an issue of MacStories Weekly, and it's sort of settling back into our routine. Now, this is our first episode of 2026. And we left AppStories listeners with our promise of our holiday projects.
Yes.
And sort of beyond relaxing and spending time with friends and family and eating lots of food and playing video games, listening to music, what do we actually do, like in terms of nerd projects? Like, where did we spend our time? And I can tell you my time went in some unexpected directions.
I have seen that, yeah.
Especially from a hardware perspective. And we're going to talk about that. But I wanted to start with your experiments because you have been... It feels like every other day I would get a text from you and the projects that you were working on kept getting crazier and crazier and more involved.
It escalated very quickly.
They escalated very quickly. And so I kind of want to know the story, and I don't think we're gonna be able to fit all of our projects in a single episode of AppStories.
Right.
So we're gonna overflow into the next one as well.
We are. We're gonna kind of do part of mine and part of yours today, and then do the other parts next week. So, well, where should I begin? I guess with what I set out to do. And one of the things I set out to do when I made a list of holiday projects, and I kept a running list over the holidays called, 2025 holiday projects. And I just made a big list. And it was clear to me that one of the things I wanted to do was to really see if I could push Claude Code to its limits and also just give it but to do that, I really needed to understand Claude Code better and really learn how to use it in a fundamentally effective way, which, there's lots of little tricks to it. And I wanted to understand, how is it different if I'm using the app on either the Mac or the iPad versus whether I'm using Claude Code in the terminal and all of that. And spoiler, I basically settled on the terminal because with access to your local file system, you can do an awful lot more working in the terminal than you can in the dedicated apps. Not that that
was also my realization. Spoiler, I also spent a lot of time with Claude Code. And for a long time, I didn't understand, why is it a big deal that people kept saying, you should be using Claude Code in the terminal as opposed to Claude Code on the web. And the trick, very simple, is that it can execute terminal commands on your local machine. And so if you're just coding and, you're checking out a GitHub repo or you're committing changes to a GitHub repo, nothing really changes that much. The secret lies when you combine that with the power to execute commands on your machine, in your local terminal, with your permissions, of course. But that opens up a world of possibilities that, from my perspective, I will explore next week. But I should have listened to you.
Yeah, no, look, even to the point of where if you're making an app that requires Xcode, like say you're making an iOS app, you can build it in the terminal and then have Claude Code open up the iOS simulator, for instance.
You don't even have to see Xcode.
No, you really don't. There's very little that you have to do there, but that's kind of beyond. That's a topic for another day. But I really felt like I wanted to see what Claude Code could do, and I felt like it was the kind of tool where I could find ways to squeeze out a little more efficiency from existing workflows. In other words, I wanted to find friction points in my workflows that weren't being satisfied by existing apps and build tools that filled those gaps between what I was already using. That was kind of the really big picture goal of what I was trying to do. And one of the first things I thought of was inspired by something that you had sent me, which was linked to Parallel.ai, which is a web search tool. That and Firecrawl, which does converting web pages into Markdown very, very effectively. They both are developer tools with APIs. Yep. And Parallel.ai, what it does, it's a very different kind of search than Google. It's designed for AI from the ground up, and it does a lot of following different paths from queries that you make, which are very different too from a Google query. And then it goes out, it churns for a while, and it comes back, and it gives you a report that's sourced. And it does a very, very good job of that. They have some sandbox tools. You can go on their website and just try doing searches, just like very much like you would a Google search, to get a feel for what it can do, which I think is really nice. And I did that, and I realized, all right, this has some real possibility for some of the research that I do. And
okay, so let me stop you right there. What is some of the research that you do?
So, for instance, last week for Club MacStories, I wrote a story about the 25th anniversary of iTunes. And there's a lot of history there, right? That was an app that was around from 2001 through 2019. Yeah. And it had a major impact on Apple's business strategy and products, from the iPod to the iPhone to selling digital goods and all of that. There's a lot there. And so what I wanted was... And what I created in the very first test query that I ran was simply asking for a history of iTunes. And what I got back was a detailed report, thousands of words long, that discussed it from the very inception, when SoundJam MP was purchased by Apple, all the way through the dismantling of it in the Mac on Catalina. That was fully sourced with links and gave me all the source material I could go back to. So that's the kind of research that I wanted to be able to do, because that's the kind of research that, barring some tool like this, it takes a lot of time. I mean, that's a lot of Google searches, a lot of opening tabs, a lot of digging through websites to find the best sources that you can use, and then organizing it all. And what I built was a way to make the jumping off point of that kind of research much faster and much easier by giving me kind of all the details up front, and then letting me follow those links myself to both confirm that they were correct.
Okay, so because typically, if you want to use Parallel, the easiest way to do it is just you sign up for a Parallel AI account.
Yeah.
And they give you some kind of credentials. Right. And you connect it to Claude, right? Because it has you can add a custom connector for Parallel. And you connect to Claude, you send your query via the Claude app, and Claude says, I'm going to send this to Parallel, and in a while, you will find this report in your Parallel account. And it may take up to 30, 40 minutes or something like that. And what you get is like a Google Doc, essentially, like a multi-thousand word report that's kind of similar to deep research in ChatGPT or Claude.
Or Perplexity. It has some similarities to Perplexity.
But it's better sourced, because this is a search engine company, effectively. It's an AI search company that produces these reports that are better sourced than other deep research reports. But what you're saying is that you didn't want to have just the report.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. Yeah, because... Yes, I have Parallel's MCP server connected to Claude already. And so day to day, when things come up that require web search, it goes to Parallel, because Parallel is better, I think, than Claude's built-in web search engine. And, you and I are sharing a Parallel account right now, and I think it started with like $80. And these searches cost pennies. Like you do one of these big reports and it might cost 5 cents. There are other things that they have that cost more. You have to kind of figure out what the most effective and efficient way to do it is. But by and large, for an individual, someone who's not hooking up this API for like an app that's being used by thousands of people, it's relatively inexpensive. And so yes, there's an MCP server, but there's also an API. And what I wanted was a way not only to get back the results inside Claude with MCP, I wanted a tool that would let me do things like dump it into Notion automatically, take all the sources that are cited, save them as markdown files with all the ads and everything stripped from the web pages, and dump those into Notion too, and to be able to view the reports on any device in Markdown from my iPhone, iPad, or Mac, and save it or share it or do all sorts of things with it. So what I started with was this deep research tool, and what it does is it's a web app. It's a progressive web app.
Okay.
It works a lot like an iOS app in that sense. It's available on all of my devices, and it runs through a server that is on my Mac. My Mac Studio sitting on my desk is on 24/7, and I set up a fast API server, which is a very fast Python-based API engine for serving, basically creating endpoints for your own projects. And that is now the core of a whole bunch of projects that I'm going to talk about over the course of time.
So your Mac Studio is on all the time. I assume it's hooked up to Tailscale.
It is.
Yeah. And you're running this server, which is a little Python server called Fast API that allows you for, I don't know, I'm just guessing. It allows you for different projects to spin up different API endpoints that you can then use from, I don't know, Shortcuts or other places.
Yeah, I'm using it from Shortcuts. I'm using it to connect to Notion via its API. I'm using it to connect to Parallels via its API. All this stuff is interconnected, and it all kind of intersects with the Mac Studio sitting on my desk. And the way that I access those things when I'm not on my own home network is with Tailscale, because Tailscale, the thing about Tailscale is it takes all the complicated aspects of SSHing back into your home server, and it eliminates a lot of the complication.
It's so good. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it gets rid of all the DNS stuff and port forwarding. It just works. And so I have a URL that even literally I was able to share with you, and you just put it into your iPhone from Italy, did a search yourself. That actually routes through my desktop computer here in North Carolina and kicked off a search that was with results that were then returned to the web API, which saves the searches so you can open them and look at them anytime. You can delete them, you can change them, you can edit them. And for me, though, like for a big project where you're going to have a real juicy project where you really want to preserve all your source material and really dig into it, the deep research tool, what it does is not only does it give you that report, I have my Python scripts which take the source URLs and put them on at the bottom of the document with number references in the body, very much in Markdown format. Yeah. Because I also wanted to be able to take this text and put it into an app, a read later app or something, and listen to it if I wanted to.
Oh, okay. So because I was wondering, like all of these reports that you generate, do you actually sit down and read all of these things?
Yeah, I do. I don't make these just for the sake of making them. I read through the.
No, I was wondering if like you were summarizing them or.
No, I read through them, and I've also set it up so I can listen to them if I want to, and that's why the links are all at the bottom of the article. And in addition to that, it takes all of those links and it uses another Python library to turn them in those linked articles into their own Markdown files and puts them in a separate Notion database that links back to the first Notion database, so that if I'm researching, I can at any time open up the report or any of its sources and take notes on them right there in Notion in line, using the documents that are created for each source and for the report itself, right side by side.
Okay.
And that was just where it started with this one tool, because there's more to that tool now.
You started with this research project.
Yeah.
And interesting. So how do you kick off this? Like you have a question, you have an idea for a story, and you want to have some research done for you. Can you kick off a research from your iPhone?
Yep, I can do it anywhere. I just go to the web app, open it up, tap a button, enter in a query, give it a name, and then wait. And as you mentioned, the deep research API that Parallel has can take a while. It can take 40 minutes.
Do you get notified at the end?
I do. I'm using Pushover to get a notification. Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
So I once that endpoint reports back and deposits the report, I get a push notification. But usually these are the kind of projects where I'm thinking of this as maybe I'm going to write about this, or I've decided to write about this, but my deadline for writing it is a week, 2-3 weeks in the future. I just want to kind of do the research now and come back to it later. So I'm not in a hurry. So the half hour doesn't really make a difference to me. So that part of it, I haven't felt really friction from, but I did add a couple of other tools. One was a quick research tool, which is just for more like compact, smaller answers, the kind of stuff you would normally just Google anyway. But what I like about using the quick version of this is that one, it's faster, and two,
how faster?
How faster? Like maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's not like Google. It's not fast in the way Google's fast, but there's very little that I need that really has to be immediate. If it has to be immediate, I'll still go to Google. This is more for, I'm curious, something pops into my head and I think I'm curious about this particular question. I'll drop it in there and then it gets saved into the web app so that I can just go back to it whenever I have time to look at it. And again, it's fully sourced, so I can kind of look back and see where all this information is coming from.
So it's like a curiosity machine. Really?
Kind of, yeah, it really is. And then the third piece is tied into Feedbin. It's not related to, it's not related to Parallels at all. What it does is it allows me to generate saved searches for Feedbin right in the web app, because Feedbin supports saved searches. Like you could do one for iOS 26.2, and it would collect all the things in your RSS feeds that you follow that are about that topic in one place. But then it also hooks into Simon Willison's LLM CLI for Claude, allowing me to summarize those in like a paragraph. So I'll get back a little report of my saved searches too, which are more than just the URLs. It's the URLs, the title, the author, all that information, the publication, as well as a little summary of what the latest news is on a particular topic.
Interesting. Nice. So that's where it started, and it's still running on your Mac Studio. Let me ask you this: you basically took a bunch of components, right? And you use Cloud Code to help you create a product just for you, right? Based on these components.
Yep.
You took an API from there and another component from there, and you put together a web app. And obviously, you can do this because you're quite technical, right? You know what setting up a Python server means on your local Mac. But I'm wondering, do you think there's potential for a company to actually make this kind of product for you, that you can just say, well, you know what, I'm just gonna use this company's product, or do you feel like you've been spoiled by the idea of I can just make my own stuff?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I have definitely been spoiled by I can just make my own stuff because it is exactly the way I want it to be for me, which I don't have to worry about edge cases or what other users might want to use it for. I built it for the way I wanted to use it. So that definitely spoils you a little bit. But I do think that there may be a market for this kind of tool to be out there. I think that this kind of web research is valuable, and we'll see more of these. I mean, we talked about this in our prediction episode. I said I thought I'd see more research apps. And at the time, I was already building this tool a little bit, thinking about how this could become a product and where AI fits into the grand scheme of research. In terms of could anybody build what I built, somebody who's not a developer, I think yes, but I do think that there's one big takeaway I've had from all these projects, which is worth stepping back and considering for a minute, which is I think you and I have spent so many years studying apps, understanding the capabilities of all of Apple's hardware, all of its OSs. We know the APIs pretty well in a non-technical sense, I would say.
Yes.
And we also have a very good feel for what apps are capable of given the current state of technology in general.
Yeah, we pretty much know what's possible and what isn't possible.
Exactly. I think what I'm trying to say is I think that we are kind of experts on everything except writing the code.
Yeah. Yes.
Everything around the code, you and I know really well, and which I think helped guide me, because my process for this was very much, I poked around parallel AI. I realized that there was something here that could be tied into Apple's systems as a tool for me. I didn't end up making it a native app, mainly because I didn't need a native app and a web app was faster and easier. But I realized there was a potential here. I went into Claude Code planning mode, which I think is something that's very valuable in these situations, which is...
I never use planning mode.
I use it every single time.
Really?
Oh, it's so good. Because...
How do you get into it? You just do
you say enter planning. Yeah, I think you can, or you just say enter planning mode. And what it does is it just goes out and it researches stuff for you and it thinks about the structure of what your thing should be. And then you get a report back, and they can be pretty long. And I scan through that, see if it makes sense. I ask follow-up questions. I say, did you consider this? Did you consider that? Eventually, after that back and forth, you get a markdown document, which is a project plan, which is nice because you can also say, save it. I'm going to work on this later because, maybe you've run out of time for the day. Or you just say, start coding. And then it walks through that step by step by step, implementing it. And I didn't know about fast API going into this. Claude Code found that. And I looked at it. I went to the website. I was like, yeah, this sounds like a good way to go. So I let it do that. And I let it just churn away and build the code. And I watch the session carefully. I'm not like YOLO moding this where I'm just like hitting a button and walking away. I'm watching, I'm interrupting whenever there's something that looks wrong to me. And then I'm having it test at each stage, go back and fix things. And then when I get at the end of that, I will iterate all over again and start from scratch, sending the app to another session of Claude and say, critique this, do a code review, evaluate whether there are any problems. And I'll do that until I'm satisfied that the bugs are basically out. And the last step is always I have it documented fully so that I have like a little how-to guide for running it and using it in the future. Especially if it's something I don't use every day and might forget, one of the commands or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it really scratched a development itch that I haven't had in a long time. It's been 10 years since I've done any coding. And I'm hesitant to say I'm doing any coding. I'm not doing any coding. I'm having Claude do the coding itself. But thinking through the process of building an app and figuring out the edge cases and the best way to implement both the UI and how it works under the hood, I find that really interesting. That's the part of coding that I always enjoyed. I always found the actual writing of the code a little frustrating because I was not very good at it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I know that there's more to this, but maybe we can continue exploring that in the next episode.
Yeah, we should get to what you were going to talk about. The only last thing I would say, Federico, is that what's interesting to me about the overall process, and right now we have barely gotten to Christmas to be at this point, but in my holiday experiments, however, I did find that it worked really well in the sense that I just took a little narrow thing, the deep research, and I built out from it. And over time, I started to see the patterns and overlaps of what I was trying to build and different aspects of what I was doing. And that ended up coalescing into a kind of a more broader based system that's running on my Mac Studio now. And those are the things I'll get into a little bit more next week. This episode of AppStories is brought to you by Copilot Money. Copilot Money is a beautifully designed money tracking app that helps your finances feel clear, calm, and fully under control. It brings all of your spending, net worth, savings goals, budgets, and investments into one intuitive dashboard. The app automatically categorizes your spending. No more manual spreadsheets or micromanaging your budget. Track your subscriptions so you always know what's renewing and when. There's no surprise charges and no forgotten free trials that way. Plus, you can set flexible saving goals with clear progress tracking to stay motivated and on course throughout 2026. The app is available on iPhone, iPad, and Mac, and recently the web with seamless cross-device syncing. That newly launched web app lets you manage your money from any browser. It's fast and easy to set up. Everything is customizable, so it fits how you want to manage your money, and Copilot Money is privacy first. Your data is never sold. Copilot Money is the only personal finance app that has ever won Apple's Editor's Choice Award, and it was an Apple Design Awards finalist. Plus, it's rated 4.8 stars on average in the App Store with over 25,000 reviews, which is really impressive. Right now, listeners of this show can get a 2-month free trial with the code AppStories at checkout. And this is your final week to get 26% off your first year when you sign up at copilot.money. That URL again to get 26% off your first year is copilot.money. Copilot Money is your money beautifully organized. Our thanks to Copilot Money for their support of AppStories.
Yeah. So I've been thinking, I've been keeping a note, like all the things that I've been building over my break.
Yeah.
And there's basically two main areas. One is about tinkering with Cloud Code and building stuff for myself, which I will talk about next week.
Yeah.
And the other is music. And today I want to talk about music. So very different topic from what John covered. So to bring a nice balance to this episode. It started with a very simple idea, and it sort of spiraled from there. I realized I wanted to listen to more music, especially going into 2026. I listened to more music in 2025 than 2024, but I wanted to continue that trend. And so we had a conversation about like, oh, do I want to use Spotify? Do I want to use Apple Music? I've been using Apple Music so far in 2026, and I'm sticking with it. But I realized something else. I hadn't used my fancy headphones, my really good headphones, in a long time, like in a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
They were just sitting there on my shelf, and I would look at them. And it was a whole thing. When we moved into our new home, I realized my fancy desktop amplifier looked really out of place here. Oh. And I didn't have enough space for it on my desk. I didn't want to put it under my desk because that's where my gaming PC is. And it was also like black and vintage looking. It didn't really fit the place. And so I said, oh, eventually I'll find something else. But results, for a year and a half, I hadn't used my headphones. My Hi-Fi Man Susvara and my Abyss Diana headphones. These are over-ear, open back, wired headphones. Audiophile headphones, I guess. In theory.
For sure, yeah.
And so I realized, well, I want to do something about this. I don't know what. I started having some ideas, and I started researching everything with ChatGPT. So I used ChatGPT Pro for all the research that I've been doing over the past 2-3 weeks. I would just ask a question, leave it thinking for 15 to 20 minutes, come back, read the report, and go from there. And so I started very, very simple. Like first thing first, I need to rebuild my own music library. Mm-hmm. I have a personal music collection that I used to store on my old Mac Mini. I think I used to have an M1 Mac Mini years ago. Mm-hmm. And I used to run Rune, which is a personal music library software that you can install on your Mac or on other compatible hardware. And Rune is both a music app to listen to music and browse your own offline personal music collection, but it's also a server. Yep. So you can store your music library in Rune and connect to the Rune server from your iPhone, from an iPad, or from another computer.
Does it work over the internet so that you can connect to it outside your home?
It does now. It does now.
Okay.
They have a product called Rune Arc that connects to a Rune server, and also you can just set it up with Tailscale, and it's going to work. So I started looking into this, but also I knew that like internet access was not a priority for me because I'm not taking my headphones anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It was mostly something for the home. And I started doing some research, and I realized, well, at the time, I mean 3 weeks ago, at the time, I didn't have an always-on Mac because I turn off my Mac Studio when I leave the office in the evening. I don't leave it running, and I didn't have an always-on Mac. And so in doing these researches with ChatGPT helped me discover this thing called rock, like the music genre, or like a rock. Rock stands for Rune Optimized.
Like the Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Like the Rock. Rock stands for Rune Optimized Core Kit.
Okay.
It's basically a small Linux-based operating system that just runs the core of the Rune software.
Okay.
It's based on Linux. You just flash it on a compatible computer, and it doesn't even have a UI. It's just a black screen with a terminal shell.
It's not made by Rune either, I assume.
It's made by Rune. It's more of a open source community effort, but it's actually made by Rune.
Oh, okay.
And you just install it, and it basically creates a Rune library. And then via the shell, you tell it where your music library is stored. You can plug in a USB drive, or you can connect to a NAS if you have it on your network. And it's just going to expose a Rune library with no UI on the server itself. You're going to see the Rune app on your Mac or your iPhone, but the Rune server is running in a terminal somewhere.
What kind of things can it run on? What kind of things can it run on? Can it run on
I remembered
okay.
that downstairs in storage, I had an old Intel NUC that was unused.
It's pretty old too.
Turns out, thanks to ChatGPT, cross-checking things, that NUC model was in fact compatible with Rock. So I took it upstairs, erased Windows, and flashed the Rune OS on it. Set it up, connected it to Ethernet, moved my music library to a USB pen drive, plugged in the pen drive, told Rune where to find the music, like volume 1/music.
Right.
And sure enough, I just opened Rune on my iPhone, automatically found that Rune was advertising on my network that it was available, and it worked. Like it took me obviously setting up the computer was a bit longer, like a couple of hours, but the actual connecting phase was like 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
It was that easy. Incredible. And so I started slowly rebuilding my own music library, and the idea of purchasing albums that I really care about. Like for example, lately I've done something that I've never done before. I started listening to this band called Deftones. I don't know if you
I know the Deftones,
Yeah. I never listened to them before. A huge hole in my music knowledge.
They're good.
And I'm in love with the latest album, Private Music.
Yeah.
And so I actually purchased the album. And for many artists, you can go to Qobuz, which is both a streaming service but also a digital store.
Yeah.
And you can purchase the albums as FLAC files, which is what I do. Or if it's like indie artists or smaller names, you can just go to Bandcamp and support the artists on Bandcamp and purchase music from Bandcamp. And so I started filling up some holes from the past couple of years in my music collection. And then I realized that, so this is where the spiraling begins.
This also is where I'm going to pause you, because this is such a familiar story where you and I think sometimes with these things, the iteration process here is very, very fast.
Because very fast.
You're like maybe a week into this process, right? At this point?
Yeah. No, like 3 days.
Oh, 3 days. Okay.
Yeah, and it's very fast, and it's now compounded by these AI services that we have. Right.
Yes. Makes you go even faster. Yeah.
You can go even faster because you can ask questions and you can iterate. You can.
Yeah.
So anyway, I realized, man, it sucks that whenever I purchase new music, that I need to go in the living room, unplug my USB drive,
put it into a Mac,
put it into a Mac, transfer the music. It's terrible. And so I realized, I did some research, and ChatGPT told me, well, why don't you get a NAS that it's a network attached storage device. You can just put it on your network. It's going to advertise a volume that you can connect to wirelessly from your machines. You can just drag and drop music there. And NAS, Roon has native support for NAS devices.
Mm-hmm.
You can just store your music library on an external SMB share. And you can just connect to it. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So I started doing some research, and ChatGPT gave me some options for there's an entire world of NAS devices. Welcome to this entire scene.
It's a complicated scene because I've done a lot of ChatGPT research myself with this stuff.
But very quickly, I understood something. I understood that I wanted something modern, state-of-the-art, small, cool, quiet, and with no spinning drives.
Yep.
And at that point, the list of requirements made the short list of candidates quite small. And I also didn't want to spend a fortune on it. So, long story short, I ended up getting the TerraMaster F8 SSD Plus.
I have never run across this one, and this was made me very curious because, SSDs and NASs, there aren't that many that are doing this.
There aren't that many.
And many of them are very, very expensive.
Yes, this is not very, very expensive. It's expensive, but not very, very expensive.
Yeah.
This is an 8-bay SSD NAS.
Yeah.
So you get yourself some M2 2280 NVMe drives. You open up the thing, there's a screwdriver built in, you plug in the drive, and then you log into this TerraMaster OS, also called TOS, and which is, again, it's a Linux-based operating system, this time with a UI. So you go in a web browser, you type in your local IP address of the NAS, and you get yourself like this Linux desktop with a bunch of apps
Linux,
and settings.
Federico. It's the year of Linux. I'm telling you, between your music and my Bazite desktop computer, it's the year of Linux.
Yeah. So anyway, the experiment already graduated to I now have a NAS and all of my music is there.
Yeah.
I can mount my music library volume on my Mac Studio or my iPhone or my MacBook Pro, and I can just drag and drop music there. When there's new music, Roon, at that point, still running on the Intel NUC, sees the new music on the NAS, scans the library again, indexes the library, and presents the new music that was added to my collection.
Let me ask you something before you move on. How much storage did you get? Because even FLAC is not so huge.
Just 1 terabyte for now.
Okay, because you have 8 bays. That's a lot of bays.
That's a lot of bays.
Even if you only got 1 terabyte sticks, that would be a lot of storage.
Yeah, so I ordered another 1 terabyte stick because I want to set up RAID. Because I want to make sure that that everything is cloned at least once.
Sure.
But I still have to, and then I guess I'll now that I have it.
Oh, you'll find uses for it.
I want to set up Time Machine. I want to set up like individual Time Machine volumes for my Mac Studio and my MacBook Pro and maybe Sylvia's computer too.
Yep.
With TOS, you can install apps on it.
Okay.
There are apps to self-host your own photo library, for example. You can install stuff like those like Pi-hole local ad blockers on your network. You can. There's like a built-in app gallery. I don't want to go overboard because I don't want to spend that much time.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I Pi-hole with me. I hear from so many people who have screwed up their systems with ad blockers.
I'm not gonna do that. But mostly I just want to set up RAID and at least Time Machine backup volumes.
Yeah.
I still haven't done that. So anyway, that's the music. I had my music library, but what about the headphones? So I looked around at my desk, and I saw that there was a spot on my desk on the left side of my monitor.
Okay.
On the left side of my monitor, there's an Acara camera that I used to keep an eye on the office.
Okay.
A Super Mario green pipe where I keep my Apple Pencil. The Sonos Move speaker that I told you about that I got for Black Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Empty spot, and then my monitor. And I realized, well, okay, what can I put there? And so after many, many, many rounds of research with ChatGPT and Claude to cross-check information, I learned that one of my favorite audio companies called FIO, I think you're familiar with FIO.
Oh, yeah, very good company.
Very good audio company.
They make all kinds of stuff, yeah.
They make all kinds of stuff for all kinds of budget levels.
Yep.
Last year, they launched this desktop amplifier and Android-based streamer called the FIO R9. It's a kind of not cube. It's like almost a cube-shaped device.
Yeah.
Very compact, very dense, and very powerful. That can drive even the most hungry headphones, such as my Hi-Fi Man Susvara.
Sure.
It's got a whole bunch of ports, a whole bunch of modes. I just wanted to have something that could drive my headphones, that wouldn't be dramatically expensive, that would look nice.
Right.
It had to look nice. The visuals are very important to me. But the thing that sold me, so I ended up getting the R9. The thing that sold me on the R9 is that when I say Android-based, I mean this thing has a display. And not just a display. This thing effectively has a little phone. Not so little, actually. And the front-facing screen is effectively an Android phone that's embedded within the unit.
Probably where they got the screen. It's probably a phone screen that they got from some manufacturer. Yeah.
It's running on Android 10, unfortunately. You can upgrade to a beta version of Android 12 if you want to. FIO has promised many times that they're going to keep it up to date. It's not clear. The thing is, I can plug in my headphones. There's a 4.4 millimeter balance port in the front of the device. But you can also install Android apps. You can install Apple Music. You can install Rune. And so all the pieces started coming together.
Interesting.
I can tell you, John, this thing is a dream.
Yeah.
Just today, I was sitting down at my desk, editing my story for MacStories Weekly, plugged in my Abyss Diana headphones, opened the Apple Music app, and started listening to music with lyrics just automatically scrolling on screen.
There you go. Right there.
Right there
like
on
that.
A separate device that is incredibly powerful. I cannot turn, I'm using it in super high gain mode. I cannot, even with my really good headphones that are so power hungry, I cannot turn the volume all the way up. Imagine how powerful this thing is.
Wow.
It's a beast. It's a little beast.
Could you install other apps and widgets and things from Android so that you could
it's Android. It's Android.
So you can see do the weather or
I got one password on it.
Okay.
I got Google Chrome on it.
Of course you do.
Yeah, I just use it. I mostly just use it for Apple Music and Rune. But this thing is obviously plugged into Ethernet. So it's, streaming is incredibly fast.
Sure.
Sees my Rune library immediately.
Does it stream out to wireless speakers too, or is it the streaming strictly the music coming to
you can
the amp?
If you want to. It's also an AirPlay compatible endpoint. It's got everything. It's got HDMI out if you want to.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah. It's got all kinds of inputs and outputs in the back, which I'm never going to use.
Yeah.
But this thing is incredibly well built and elegant and easy to use and powerful. And it's now sitting on the left side of my monitor. So that's sort of my solution for the desk for the headphones. There are still a couple of other things that I want to mention before I'll wrap up with one final cliffhanger for next week. I also got, since I was on a FIO kick, I also revived another FIO product that I purchased a couple of years ago, the FIO M17. This is a portable player.
I remember this.
Based on Android that can also drive my Hi-Fi Man Susvara. It's a really powerful Android DAP, so digital audio player. Mm-hmm. It cannot drive the Susvara to the levels of the R9.
Right.
Because it's still a portable thing. Yeah. But I set it up again. It's got Apple Music, and it's got Rune, so I can connect to my own personal music library. And lastly, I learned that FIO, since when I want to listen to music, but Sylvia is at home, she really dislike when I'm using open back headphones.
Yeah,
because of the sound, because of the sound leakage.
Yeah.
And so I got the FIO FT1 closed back headphones.
Oh, okay.
These are really nice. They have this sort of this wood texture on the ear cups, and they're closed back, so it's a really different experience from open back headphones. But they sound really nice. They sound really nice.
FIO makes some interesting stuff. I think if you've never heard of them, it's worth checking out what they make, especially if you're a fan of music, obviously. Here's a surprise for you, Federico. I bought a DAP over the holidays too.
What?
But it's a very, very inexpensive FIO DAP. It was one of those cassette player ones.
Oh, nice.
That they make that we talked to Brendan about on NPC a while back. I was like, oh yeah, I want to try one of these. I think they're like $60, $50, something like that. And I just want to throw some music on there and give it a try.
Nice.
That'll be my gateway drug, I think.
Yeah. And so to sum things up, I have all the pieces going, right? My room library, the NAS, my headphones with the desktop amp, an Android streamer, my portable player, closed back headphones.
It's networked. That's great.
All good. But then I realized, well, cool. But it's a shame that this Intel NUC is just running the Roon operating system.
Sure.
Sure, it was finally nice that I had an always-on computer, but it was limited to Roon. And I realized, well, all these things that I'm building with Cloud Code on the side, they would really benefit from being able to run at all times on a machine that I could easily control. And so you know what it means, John.
Oh, I know exactly
I
what it
opened
means.
the Italian Apple website and I got myself a refurbished M4 Mac Mini.
You know what's so funny about that, Federico, is I had my finger on the buy button for one of those too on the refurbished site, because you probably saw in our group chat that I was looking at my old Mac Mini, my Intel-based one at one point, trying to figure out what the resale value was, because I was thinking of doing the same thing. Instead of using my Mac Studio as the server, using a Mac Mini, I ended up just using the Mac Studio just because it was more convenient. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to use a Mac Mini that way.
Yeah, so I ended up getting one, and that's where the story will begin in the next episode.
All right, I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, in the post-show for AppStories Plus subscribers, I will talk about something else that I got. Little hardware thing that I got during my holiday break, and that I'm spending some time with for something that will make more sense in September 2026. You're like, what? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, everybody. We've got lots more to talk about. Federico and I stayed pretty busy over the holidays, I think.
Yes.
And a lot of these projects are continuing, because as you've heard, Federico's not finished with everything he wants to do to set things up, nor am I for that matter, but it's been a lot of fun. I want to thank our sponsor for this week's episode. That is Copilot Money. Go check them out. You'll find a link in the show notes. And of course, you can find both of us on MacStories.net and on social media, where Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHN VOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.